The return. Nobody expected. The sun dipped low over the hills as a dusty old bus rolled into the sleepy village of Chandapur. It groaned to a halt near the run-down tea stall, hissing like it didn't want to stop here either. A thin man, in a faded kurta and cheap sandals, stepped off, carrying nothing but a small brown bag. Nobody paid him any attention. Just another poor traveller passing through, but that man was no ordinary traveller. He was Arav Malhotra, India's youngest billionaire, founder of one of the biggest tech firms in the country, owner of luxury, hotels across the world, and the face that appeared in almost every business magazine. Except here no one knew, and that was the plan. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and took a deep breath of the hot, dusty air. It was the same scent he remembered from 18 years ago, earthy, raw, and laced with smoke from cow dung fires. This place hadn't changed much, but he had. A lot. He walked slowly, not because he was tired, but because his heart was pounding with memories he had long buried. This was the village where his life had broken apart, where he had left everything behind, his wife, his dreams, and his children, triplets. They were born in a small, barely functioning hospital nearby. He still remembered holding all three at once, crying, scared, proud. But fate wasn't kind. A bitter fight, accusations of betrayal, and one dark night later, he was gone, driven out, cut off. He had spent years building an empire from scratch, every rupee earned with vengeance in his heart. He had planned never to look back. But 3 months ago, something inside him cracked. Maybe it was that interview, the one where a girl, with the same dimples as him, talked about her struggles in Chandapur. Maybe it was just guilt. Or maybe it was that stupid dream he kept having, of 3 teenagers calling him Baba with tears in their eyes. Whatever it was, he had made a decision. He had to see them. Not as the billionaire who had once abandoned them, but as someone they might not hate on sight. So he sold his suits, shaved his beard, paid an old friend to create fake documents, and took the bus back to where it all began. He walked through the narrow lanes, each one whispering stories of his past. The old banyan tree where he had proposed to Meera, the broken well where he once taught the kids to swim. His heart ached with each step. Finally, he stood in front of a crumbling 2-story house. The paint had peeled, and the windows looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. But the noise coming from inside, laughter, shouting, maybe even singing, felt like music to him. He stood still, watching. 3 teenagers burst out the front door, chasing each other and arguing about something ridiculous. Anaya, stop acting. Like you're the boss. I am the boss, Ved. I'm the oldest, by 2 minutes. Exactly, now shut up. He couldn't believe it. They were real. They were here. And they were beautiful, smart-mouthed, alive, strong. Everything he had ever hoped for. He stepped back, heart in his throat. What now? He muttered to himself. Just then, an old man with a walking stick tapped him on the shoulder. You look lost, Baya, the man said, eyeing him carefully. Looking for someone? Arav smiled weakly, his throat dry. I'm just new here. Came looking for work. Heard this family, Meera's. They sometimes need help? The old man scratched his chin. Meera? You mean the widow with the 3 kids? She could use help, but she's stubborn, won't take charity. Widow? The word hit him like a slap. He clenched his fists. What happened to her husband, he asked, though he already knew the answer. Gone. Years ago. Some say he died in the city. Others say he ran off. Nobody knows the truth. Arav swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. Well, he said quietly, maybe I can help out. Just for food and shelter. The old man nodded, his eyes softening. Go knock, but don't expect a warm welcome. Arav turned, adjusted his bag, and walked toward the house where his past and his future waited. His heart whispered their names with every step. Anaya, Ved, Kabir. He was finally home. The wooden door creaked as Arav raised his hand and knocked. Gently, almost afraid the sound would shatter the moment. Inside, the voices quieted, replaced by the sound of hurried footsteps. A few seconds later, the door swung open. Meera stood there, framed in the doorway, her eyes narrow with suspicion. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, strands escaping here and there. She looked older, thinner, tired, but still carried that quiet strength he had fallen for so long ago. "Yes?" she asked, arms crossed. Arav lowered his eyes, hiding the storm inside him. He had practiced this part over and over on the way here. "I'm looking for work, Behenji," he said, voice low and scratchy. "Someone told me you might need help." "Cooking, cleaning, anything." Mira looked him over, clearly unimpressed. "I don't have money to pay you. I don't need money. Just food and a roof. That's all." She hesitated, staring at him like she was trying to figure out his real story. He knew her well, too well. She didn't trust easily, and he didn't blame her. Behind her, a boy with sharp eyes and a mop of messy hair peeked out. "Ma, who's this guy?" "Some poor man looking for work," she said without turning around. "Looks like a thief," the boy muttered, clearly not trying to hide it. Arav smiled faintly. That had to be Kabir, the bold one. Always spoke his mind, even as a toddler. "You can sweep the veranda," Mira said finally. "If you do it right, I'll think about dinner." He nodded quickly. "Thank you." She stepped aside, and he walked in slowly, heart racing. The house was small, 2 rooms, 1 broken fan, cracked walls and the faint smell of turmeric and sweat. But it was full of life, and for the first time in years so was he. He worked all day without complaint. He swept, scrubbed, cleaned the front steps, even fixed the squeaky hinge on the gate. The children kept watching him from the corner of their eyes, whispering among themselves. By evening, Mira came out with a plate of rice and lentils. "Eat," she said, placing it on the floor. "And don't expect more tomorrow unless you earn it again." He bowed his head. "I understand, thank you." As he ate, he listened. The kids were arguing again, this time about school. "I'm telling you, I aced that math test," said Anaya, her voice loud and proud. "You always say that." "Then you bring home a C," Ved teased. "I got a B+ last time." "That was in drawing class." He chuckled quietly. The sound caught Mira's attention. She glanced at him, puzzled. "You find my kids funny?" He shook his head. No. Just, they remind me of someone, that's all." She didn't reply. She just walked away. That night she let him sleep on a mat near the kitchen. As he lay there staring at the ceiling, he fought back tears. His children were just a few steps away, living their lives, growing up without knowing their father was under the same roof. He wanted to reach out, hug them, tell them everything. But he knew he couldn't. Not yet. They hated the man who had left them, and in their eyes that man was dead. He had to earn their trust, slowly, carefully, like rebuilding a house, 1 brick at a time. Over the next few days, he kept working. Mira still didn't talk much, but she stopped looking at him, with suspicion. The kids started throwing him questions. "What's your name? Where are you from? Why are you so quiet?" He told them his name was Raj, that he came from another village, that he had no family. They believed him, until one night Anaya walked up to him with her school notebook. "Raj, uncle, can you help me with this physics problem?" He stared at the page. It was something he had once solved for a government project years ago. He picked up the pen and explained it to her in a few sentences, drawing diagrams with perfect ease. Anaya stared at him, mouth open. "Whoa, you're not just some poor cleaner, are you?" He smiled. "I used to study a lot, long ago." She grinned. "You're weird, but smart." That night, Arav lay on his mat with a tear running down his cheek. It had begun. A crack had formed in the wall between him and his children. Now all he had to do was break it down. Days turned into weeks, and the strange, quiet man named Raj slowly became part of the household. Mira still didn't say much to him, but her eyes weren't as guarded. She began asking him to run errands, trusted him, with small tasks like picking up groceries or escorting the kids to school when she was too busy. The triplets, Anaya, Ved, and Kabir, began to accept his presence as something normal, even dependable. Arav had learned to live like he never had before. The billionaire who once signed deals in glass towers now fetched water from a hand pump, bathed in cold buckets, and cooked on a wood fire. But oddly, he didn't mind. In fact, for the first time in years, he felt human again. Not powerful, not rich, just human. He watched the kids closely, trying to piece together what kind of people they were becoming. Anaya was fierce, like her mother. She dreamed big, talked fast, and carried her siblings like a leader. She often spoke of becoming a scientist and leaving the village behind for a better life. Ved was quieter, more thoughtful. He loved books, especially about space and history. Arav often caught him reading late at night by candlelight, and once even fixed his broken reading glasses when no one was watching. Kabir, the youngest by a few minutes, was the wild one. Always in some fight, always loud. But his heart was gold. He'd help old ladies carry firewood, and once got scolded for giving away his school lunch to a stray dog. One evening, Arav found all three sitting under the neem tree in their yard, talking about their father. "They say he ran away," Kabir muttered, bitterness in his voice. "Maybe he died," Ved said quietly. "Ma never tells us anything." Anaya's eyes narrowed. "He left. I don't care what Ma says. He didn't want us." Arav stood in the shadows, his heart breaking piece by piece. Kabir kicked a rock. "If I ever meet him, I'll punch him in the face." Arav bit his lip so hard. It bled. He wanted to scream, "I didn't leave you, I was forced to. I didn't even know if I could come back." But instead he walked away, silent, just like he had all these years. That night, as he sat near the back of the house fixing an old lantern, Mira appeared with a cup of tea. She didn't say anything, just placed it beside him and sat down, wiping her hands on her sari. He looked up, startled. "For me," she nodded. "You've been working hard, and the kids like you, even if they act like they don't." He smiled faintly and took the cup. "They're special." "They're fighters," she said, staring into the dark. "They had to be." There was silence for a moment. "Your husband?" he asked quietly. "He really left?" She didn't answer right away. Her voice, when it came, was cold. "He made promises, big ones. Said we'd have a house in the city, a better life. Said he loved me more than anything. Then one day he was gone. No letter, no call. Just disappeared." Arav's fingers trembled around the cup. "Do you hate him?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Sometimes I think I do. Other times I just feel sorry for him. He missed everything. First steps, first words, school, laughter, pain, all of it. And for what? Money?" He couldn't look at her. She stood up. "Anyway, you're not him. You're here." And that's more than he ever was. When she left, he didn't move for a long time. Her words had struck deep. He had missed everything. And no amount of money or apologies could give that back. But he was here now, and somehow he had to make that count. The next morning, something changed. Ved ran into the house, waving a piece of paper. "Ma, I got selected. The city school, scholarship." Mira dropped the pot she was holding. "What? They're giving me a hostel seat, free tuition. I'm going to study in Pune." Anaya and Kabir jumped around, cheering, but Mira's face was tight with worry. "We can't afford the travel, or the uniform, or even your books." Arav stepped forward. "I have some savings," he said carefully. "Not much, but enough to help." She looked at him, hesitant. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," he said gently. "It's a gift for a boy who deserves more." She stared at him long and hard, then gave the slightest nod. That night, as Arav counted the last of his hidden emergency money under a flickering lantern, he smiled. Helping Ved reach his dream was the first thing he could do right, but he also knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came knocking, and when it did, he wasn't sure if love would be enough to survive it. The day Ved left for Pune was a mixture of pride and pain. Mira packed his bag thrice, double-checking everything, from socks to his toothbrush. Anaya teased him about getting homesick, while Kabir pretended not to care, but his eyes were red and puffy by morning. Arav stood quietly by the side, watching, heart swelling with emotions he wasn't allowed to express. Ved hugged Mira tightly, then Anaya and Kabir. When he turned to Arav, still known as Raj, there was a flicker of something uncertain. "Thanks." "For the books," Ved mumbled, shuffling his feet. Arav patted his shoulder. Make the world listen to you. Ved smirked. Yeah, I'll try. As the bus pulled away and the dust clouded the road, Mira stood frozen, staring into the distance, a mother letting go, unsure if the world would be kind to her son. Arav stood beside her, not speaking, just present. Later that evening, the silence in the house was heavier than usual. Anaya didn't fight with Kabir, Mira didn't nag about homework. And Arav, well, he found himself sitting by Ved's empty bed, staring at the half-torn poster of the solar system on the wall. He had helped his son begin his journey, but it felt like he had lost him all over again. 2 days passed quietly, then everything shattered. A black SUV pulled up outside. The house one hot afternoon. It didn't belong in the village. Too shiny, too foreign. 2 men in black shirts and dark sunglasses stepped out and began asking around. The villagers whispered and stared. Nobody ever saw such cars unless someone rich got lost. Or someone powerful came hunting. Arav was sweeping the front yard when he saw them. His stomach dropped. One of the men spotted him and walked over. "Sir," he said in a low voice, "you need to come with us. Now." Mira was at the door, eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "We're here on behalf of Mr. Arav Malhotra's legal office," the man said, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "He's been missing for weeks. There's been media pressure, security concerns. His board is panicking." Mira looked from the man to Arav and then back again, confused. "What are you talking about? This is Raj. He works for—" The man pulled out a tablet, tapped a few times, and held up a photo. There was Arav, in a designer suit, stepping out of a private jet. Kabir came running to the door. "That's him!" Mira turned to Arav, her face drained of color. "Is this true?" Arav dropped the broom, his mouth dry. The whole village had started gathering, whispering louder now. "I was going to tell you," he said softly. I didn't know how." "You lied," Anaya said coldly, stepping out from behind her mother. "All this time?" Mira's lips trembled. "Why? Why would a billionaire live like this? Pretend to be poor, eat on the floor, fix leaky taps?" "Because it was the only way to see my children again," he said. His voice cracked. "You would have shut the door in my face if I came as the man who left you." Silence. Heavy. Brutal. "Silence, you're our father," Kabir asked, looking like he'd just been slapped. Arav stepped forward. "Yes, I am." Mira flinched. "And you thought playing poor would fix that," Anaya hissed. "Do you know how many nights Ma cried herself to sleep? How many times we went hungry while you probably drank wine in some hotel?" "I didn't." "No," he said, pleading. "I thought you hated me. I thought—" "You didn't think at all," Mira snapped, eyes burning. "You just ran away when it got hard. And now what? You think showing up with a broom in your hand makes it all okay?" He wanted to speak, to explain, but there were no words strong enough to erase 18 years of pain. "I didn't come for forgiveness," he said finally, broken. "I came because I missed you. I never stopped missing you." The crowd had grown now. Neighbors, curious children, even the chaiwala had come to see the drama unfold. Mira's voice was ice. "You should leave. Mira, please. Go back to your jets and mansions. We survived without you. We'll continue to survive." Anaya turned her back. Kabir didn't move. And just like that, Arav Malhotra, the man who built $1 billion empire, stood alone in the dirt, heart shattered, surrounded by the people he loved most, who no longer wanted anything to do with him. The SUV door stood open. He looked at Mira one last time, then he turned and walked away. But as he reached the car, a small voice called out behind him, "Wait!" It was Kabir. Tears streaked down his cheeks. "Just tell me one thing," he said, voice trembling. "Did you ever think about us? Like, really?" Arav's eyes met his. "Every day." Kabir stood frozen as the words echoed in the hot air. "Every day." There was something in Arav's voice, something raw and heavy, that struck deeper than Kabir expected. His siblings didn't say a word, and Mira looked away, lips pressed together, like she was holding back an emotion that scared her. The SUV waited, engine running, a silent reminder that Arav didn't belong here anymore. He didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes locked on Kabir, hoping for a single sign, anything, to show he hadn't lost everything. Kabir wiped his face quickly and ran back inside. The moment broke. Arav turned toward the car. The man in the black shirt opened the door and said quietly, "Sir, you should go," but he couldn't. His feet didn't move. His heart didn't agree. Instead, he turned back and looked at the crowd, then at Mira. "I'm not leaving like this," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Anaya scoffed. "You already did, 18 years ago." Mira stared at him. For a long moment, her voice like stone. "If you stay outside these walls. You don't get to walk back in just because you regret it." "I'll take that," he whispered. "I'll stay outside, I'll sleep in the field, but I'm not going back to a palace while my family thinks I don't care." She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes. It wasn't hatred anymore. It was pain. Deep, unresolved pain. The black SUV eventually drove away without him. That night, Arav found shelter under the neem tree where he once taught the kids to count stars. He used an old shawl as a blanket and lay on the ground staring at the sky. He didn't sleep. In the morning, Kabir walked by with a cricket bat slung over his shoulder. He stopped when he saw Arav trying to light a small fire to make tea. "You're seriously staying here?" he asked. Arav smiled weakly. "I told you I would." Kabir sat down on the ground across from him, silent. Then he looked up. "What was it like? Being rich?" Arav thought for a second. "Lonely, until recently." Kabir chuckled bitterly. "We used to dream about finding you. Anaya always said she'd slap you if she ever saw you again." "She still might," Arav said, smiling sadly. "You know she cried last night, right?" Kabir added, voice quiet. "She won't say it, but I think she wanted to believe you were dead. It made it easier." Arav nodded slowly. "I understand. I thought staying away would protect you all." "It was cowardice, I see that now." Kabir didn't respond for a while. Then he stood up and tossed a packet toward him. "Take it. It's Anaya's snacks. She packed too much. Don't tell her." And just like that, the second crack appeared in the wall. By the end of the week, Arav had built a small bamboo shelter beside the river with help from some villagers. He worked as a handyman, fixing roofs, painting fences, even tutoring local kids in science. Word spread fast that Raj was actually someone important, but nobody pressed him. They liked the humble version more. One morning, Mira came to him with a small envelope. "For Ved," she said flatly. "You can send him money if you want, but don't expect thank yous." "I won't," he said. "I just want to help where I failed before." "Good," she replied. "Keep it that way." Anaya still ignored him, but sometimes late at night, he'd catch her standing outside, staring in his direction. Kabir came often, pretending it was for snacks or to borrow tools, but he stayed longer each time. Then one afternoon, news came. Ved had collapsed during class. The school called Mira, panicking. He was rushed to a hospital in Pune, unconscious. They suspected stress or some underlying condition no one knew about. Mira broke down. Her hands shook as she tried to talk on the phone. Anaya cried. Kabir punched a wall. Arav made one call. Within 2 hours, a helicopter landed in a nearby field. "Come," Arav told Mira, who stood stunned, holding her son's crumpled admission letter. "I can't leave the kids. I'll take care of that," Anaya said, stepping up with a trembling voice. "You go. Find out what's wrong." Without another word, Mira climbed in with him. As the helicopter rose over the trees, she didn't say a word. But she didn't push his hand away when he gently held hers. It was the smallest of mercies, but to Arav it felt like the first step toward redemption. The helicopter ride to Pune was quiet, but not cold. Mira sat stiffly, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the clouds beyond the glass window. Arav didn't press her with words. He knew they would only make things worse. Instead, he focused on getting her there as fast as possible. His mind raced with fears he wouldn't dare speak aloud. Was Ved okay? Had the years of malnutrition and stress finally caught up with him? Had his absence, his cowardice, contributed to this? When they reached the hospital, a team of private doctors Arav had hired in advance met them at the helipad. Within minutes, they were inside a clean white corridor that smelled like sanitizer and sorrow. Mira gripped her dupatta tightly as they approached the ICU doors. "Where is he?" she asked, her voice cracking. A nurse appeared. "He's stable." He had a severe fainting episode, stress-related hypoglycemia and low blood pressure. We've done scans, blood work. He'll be okay. But he needs care. Proper care. Relief hit Mira like a wave, and she collapsed into the nearest chair. Arav stood beside her, not touching, not speaking, just present. Later, inside the room, Ved lay asleep, hooked up to IV lines, his breathing steady. Mira sat at his side, brushing his hair gently with trembling fingers. Arav watched from the corner, hands in his pockets, trying to keep his emotions buried. But Ved looked so small again, like the infant he had once held in both arms, the one he'd whispered promises to, all broken. After a long silence, Mira spoke. "You built empires, but you couldn't build the courage to come back for us." He nodded. "I hated myself more than you ever could." She looked at him, eyes tired. "You should have fought. For them, for me." "I know," he said softly. "But I was a coward, Mira. I was scared I'd be a failure again. I buried myself in work and told myself that sending money one day would make it right." She shook her head. "It never would have," he sighed, stepping forward slowly. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, or theirs. I just want to be useful now, to fix what I can." Ved stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Ma." Mira leaned close. "I'm here, Beta. You're okay." Ved's gaze shifted and landed on Arav. He blinked, confused. You came?" Arav smiled through the tightness in his throat. "Of course I came, always will." Ved didn't say anything. He just stared for a long time, and then slowly turned back toward Mira and whispered, "He looks like me." That night, Arav paid for a private recovery room and arranged for Mira to stay at a nearby hotel suite. She protested, of course, but eventually relented. He didn't go back to the hotel himself. He stayed on the hospital floor outside Ved's room, dozing in a chair. Days passed. Ved improved quickly, thanks to better food, proper rest, and Mira's constant care. Arav only visited briefly, each day never overstepping. He knew he was still a ghost in their lives, a shadow trying to earn back form. One morning, Ved called him in. "I want to ask you something," he said, voice still raspy. Arav pulled up a chair. "Anything? Why didn't you ever call or write? Didn't you wonder how we were doing?" Arav swallowed hard. "I did, every single day, but I thought I'd only bring pain if I returned. I didn't think I deserved to be part of your lives." Ved studied him with a strange, searching expression. "Anaya still hates you. Kabir's trying to act tough, but he cried after you left." Arav looked away. "They should hate me." "Yeah, maybe," Ved said, then paused. "But we also wanted to know you." That hit like a punch to the gut. "You still can," Arav whispered, "if you let me." A few minutes later, Mira walked in with a cup of tea. Ved nodded toward Arav. He should stay. She raised an eyebrow. "Here?" she asked. Ved nodded. "At least until I'm out of the hospital." Arav didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just placed his hand over Ved's gently. "Thank you." Outside, Mira sat on a bench beside Arav. "He's too kind," she said, not unkindly. "I'll take it," Arav replied. She hesitated for a moment, then added, "When we go back to the village, you can visit." "Visit? Don't push your luck," he chuckled softly, staring ahead. "I'll take that too." In that hospital, under the buzz of fluorescent lights and the hum of machines, Arav got something he never thought he'd have again, a second chance, and this time he wasn't going to let go. The train back to Chandapur was nothing like the ride to Pune. This time, Mira didn't sit stiff and silent. She looked out the window, thoughtful, while Ved rested with his head on her lap. Arav sat across from them, quietly watching the scenery blur by. No guards, no assistants, no expensive suits, just a man returning with the tiniest seed of hope in his chest. Ved occasionally glanced up at him, a small smile touching his lips before quickly fading. Arav didn't expect more. That one smile was more than he ever thought he'd earn back. When they arrived at the station, the dusty warmth of the village wrapped around them. The air smelled of mud, smoke, and sugarcane. Arav stepped off the train last, nervous. Not of the village, but of his daughter, Anaya. She hadn't spoken to him since the truth came out. Her eyes had been daggers, her silence louder than any slap. And now, he was about to face that all over again. The walk home was quiet. Kabir was waiting at the gate, arms crossed, pretending not to smile when he saw Ved. "You're late," he said, eyes flicking toward Arav for the briefest second. "I had to survive luxury," Ved replied with a grin, pulling him into a quick hug. Arav noticed the hesitation, the tension. Kabir didn't say anything to him, just nodded once and stepped aside. Inside, the house felt smaller than before. Anaya was seated at the table, scribbling in her notebook. She looked up when they entered. Her eyes found Arav, and for a long moment, the entire room held its breath. "Glady." "You're okay," she said flatly to Ved, then stood and walked toward the kitchen. Arav didn't follow. He didn't speak. He simply picked up the bag of groceries he had brought along and started helping Mira unpack. That night, Mira allowed him to sleep on the veranda again. He didn't argue. The village hadn't forgotten either. Everywhere he walked, people greeted him with a strange mix of respect and suspicion. Some admired him for returning. Others whispered behind his back, wondering what kind of man walks away from Triplets only to show up 18 years later with a billionaire's wallet. But Arav didn't respond to any of it. Instead, he worked. He repaired a leaking roof for the school, donated new blackboards, but anonymously. He set up a free library in the Panchayat building and quietly paid off the debt of a struggling local farmer who had nearly lost his land. And slowly, without any grand gestures, people stopped calling him the missing father and started calling him Rajbhaiya again. Still, Anaya kept her distance. Then one afternoon, she got into a fight at school. The headmaster sent a letter home saying she'd insulted another student who mocked her for being a charity case. She stormed home, furious, hurt and embarrassed. Mira tried to talk to her, but Anaya locked herself in her room. Arav stood at the door for a long time, debating with himself. Then he knocked, once. "What?" came her angry voice. "It's me," he said gently. "I just want to say something." No reply, but she didn't tell him to go away, so he spoke. "You don't have to fight every battle alone, Anaya. I know you've had to be strong, for your mother, for your brothers, but you're still a kid and it's okay to lean on someone." She didn't respond, but the silence didn't feel as sharp as before. He continued, "I know I haven't earned the right to be your father again, but if you ever want someone to stand beside you, I'm not going anywhere." He stepped back and left a small envelope outside her door. Inside were documents, not money but scholarship forms to one of the best science programs in the state, the same one he'd once helped create years ago. That night, she didn't speak to him. But the next morning, her form was missing from the doorstep. Weeks passed and things began to settle into a strange, fragile balance. The villagers started visiting Arav for help, not for money but advice. The kids began calling him uncle again. Even Mira began to ask for his opinion now and then, especially when it came to Ved's city schooling. Then one morning, while fixing a broken bicycle in the yard, Kabir walked up and tossed a mango at him. "You're staying for good, huh?" Arav smiled, catching the mango. "If your mom lets me." Kabir shrugged. "She pretends like she hates it. But you know, she's been boiling an extra cup of tea every morning. Just saying." Arav laughed, a real laugh. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Anaya walked up to him as he sat on the veranda. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, she sat down beside him. "I read those scholarship forms." He didn't look at her, afraid to scare away the moment. "Yeah, I want to apply." His heart clenched. "You should. You're smart enough to go anywhere." A pause. Then, "You broke something in me when you left." "I know," he whispered. "I don't forgive you. I don't expect you to." Another pause. "But if you ever lie to me again, I will ruin your car." This time he smiled. "I'll buy a really cheap one then." And just like that, the wall between father and daughter cracked. Not shattered, not fallen, but cracked just enough for light to get through. For the first time, the family was together. Not perfect, not healed, but on the same page. Almost, because there was still one more thing Arav hadn't told them. The truth behind why he really left. Arav knew he couldn't carry the final piece of truth any longer. Not now that his children had begun to open up. Not now that Mira had allowed him space, however small, in their lives. The lie he had lived with for 18 years sat like poison in his chest. The real reason he left wasn't just fear, it was blackmail. He waited until the house was quiet that night. Mira was in the kitchen washing the last of the dishes. Kabir and Ved were arguing over who'd eaten more mangoes, while Anaya scribbled in her notebook under a dim lantern. Arav stood near the doorway, watching them. A strange warmth filled the small room, something like home, and then quietly he said, "I need to tell you something." All eyes turned to him. Mira looked up from the sink, the cloth in her hand dripping onto the floor. She must have known. She had always known there was something more, something he hadn't said. He took a deep breath. "The night I left, I didn't just walk away." The room fell still. No one moved. "I was forced to leave." Mira narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean, forced?" He stepped inside and sat down, his hands clasped tightly. "You remember my old business partner, Arvind Joshi?" She frowned. "So yes, he was there when you started the cyber cafe. You said he was like a brother." "He was," Arav said grimly, "until he wasn't." He went on. Arvind had been jealous of Arav's ideas, his growing influence, and especially the love he had from Mira and the village. When they began pitching their first tech product to investors, Arvind had forged documents and stolen files behind Arav's back, then went to the police and filed a complaint under Arav's name. "They came for me in the middle of the night," he said. "I barely escaped. I was given a choice, disappear and never come back or face jail for a crime I didn't commit." Mira gasped. "You never told me." "I couldn't," he said. "They threatened you and the kids. Arvind knew everything, where you lived, your schedule. He said if I ever tried to clear my name, he'd make sure the children suffered." Kabir looked stunned. Anaya's pen dropped onto her notebook. Ved's mouth hung slightly open. "You didn't run because you didn't love us?" Kabir asked. Slowly. Arav shook his head, voice shaking. "I ran because I loved you too much to risk losing you." Anaya folded her arms, guarded as always. "And what changed now?" "I got enough power to crush him," Arav said, a faint fire returning to his eyes. "Years later, I tracked him down, built the case, won it in silence. I could have come back right then, but I didn't, because by then I thought you all had moved on." Mira sat heavily on the bench beside the window, tears forming in her eyes but refusing to fall. "You should have come anyway," she whispered. "I know," he said. "I know." Ved stood up and walked over, placing a hand on his father's shoulder. Kabir didn't say anything, but his jaw was tight, eyes focused. Anaya stood too, brushing her fingers through her hair like she always did when she was overwhelmed. "You're still an idiot," she said. "But I guess not the monster I thought." Arav looked at Mira. "I came back poor because I didn't want to win you all over with money. I wanted you to see the man first, not the billionaire." Mira looked at him long and hard. "And now? I'll stay, as long as you'll have me." She didn't answer, but the next morning he found an extra plate on the breakfast table. No one mentioned it. Not Anaya, not Kabir, not Ved. But the silence wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, familiar. That evening, Mira came to the veranda where Arav sat fixing Anaya's old school bag. She handed him a cup of tea. "You still snore," she said. Arav looked up, surprised. "I do?" Louder than ever. They both smiled, tired smiles filled with history and heartache. Then Mira added quietly, "Don't ever leave again, no matter what." "I won't," he whispered. "Not ever again." And as the sun sank behind the neem tree and the kids chased each other across the yard, Arav Malhotra, once a billionaire, once a ghost, sat beside the woman he had lost, and found again, watching the life he never thought he'd be part of, come back together, piece by fragile piece. This time he was ready to stay. No more pretending, no more running, just a father, home at last.